Hello, everyone, and welcome today to our Career Corner. We have Zoe, and I'm going to have her introduce herself, and she is going to be talking about some work that she has been doing and then what kind of work she is going to be doing in the future. Zoe just graduated, and she is taking her graduate work into the actual field where she's going to be working. So welcome, Zoe, and you want to tell us a little bit about yourself today?
Yeah, so my name is Zoe O'Donohue. I'm originally from New Mexico, but I've been in Colorado for the past 6 years doing my graduate school studies. I study viruses, and so I'm a scientist. I'm a researcher, and I work in a lab. And I recently, as Rachel mentioned, just graduated with my PhD in microbiology. And I'm still working in the lab right now, but I'm applying for jobs and trying to move on to the next stage of my career.
Excellent. How or why did you get led to this particular career and job field?
Right. So I always just really liked science, and I always thought that those classes were always my favorite. I was always most interested in doing experiments and the part of science where you get to sort of tinker around with things and do experiments and ask a question and then do an experiment and see what happens. I love that process. And so I just sort of, when I went to finish high school and everybody's asking you, what are you going to do with your life? I was like, I don't know, but I like science, so I guess I'll keep doing that. And I really like the ocean. And so I went to college somewhere near the ocean, which was really wonderful. And I studied the ocean. And then for graduate school, I decided to switch gears because I got really interested in infectious diseases and how tiny little organisms can make us so sick, which we're all really learning right now. But yeah, it's just, so I kind of just followed what I was interested in and passionate about. And it's worked out well so far.
Excellent. Thank you. You said you went to graduate school and it sounds like you also went to undergrad. So can you give us that trajectory of what that looked like?
Yeah, so after graduating high school, I had applied to colleges my senior year. And because I knew I wanted to do science, I chose a college that had let me into their freshman research program. So I was able to do research right when I started college, which was amazing. And it was a really unique opportunity. And that kind of solidified that I was doing the things that I liked to do. So I spent 4 years at my college. And then I actually, I took 2 years off. I knew I was going to go to grad school and that I wanted to keep doing science, but I also knew that there were lots of places in the world and things that I wanted to experience that that time when I didn't really have like a job or a mortgage or like adult grown-up things kind of tying me down. I was like, I would like to see some parts of the world. So I actually took some time off to travel, which was a really wonderful and lucky experience that I got to have. And then I came back to the United States and applied for grad schools, and I knew that I wanted to study microbiology, but I was a little unsure whether I wanted to look at bacteria or viruses, so I applied to a lot of programs. A lot of graduate schools have what are called umbrella programs, which means you can apply to a wide variety of disciplines, whether you're interested in physics or brain chemistry or how cells work or how birds fly. Like there's all different types of scientific research that happen. And so I applied to a lot of programs that would let me sort of explore a lot of different things. And I ended up in Colorado, in part because I have family nearby, but also because the program was really interesting and had a lot of cool science going on.
So as somebody who's been to graduate school, I understand that there are 2-year programs to get a master's. There are 3-year programs to get a doctorate, and then there are some programs that you can do all 5 years at the same place. Is that kind of what you did? You did all 5 years at the same place, or was it 2 and 3? How did that work?
So my track was very much, I just did a PhD, and that was actually, it took me 6 years. So in the United States, people usually take 4 to 6-ish years to get a PhD. There are master's programs that you can do before getting a PhD, if you want to explore another area and aren't quite sure you're ready to commit the full amount of time for a PhD, you can do a master's. And those master's programs typically involve more coursework and taking classes, and then you write like a big paper sort of at the end. The PhD is much more research intensive, at least when it comes to sciences. So I only took like 1.5 years of actual classes for my PhD, and then the rest was all just research and doing experiments in the lab. So it's technically school, but it didn't really feel like school. It really just feels like that's your job. And you do get a stipend for a PhD. For masters, you do pay tuition. For PhDs in the sciences, you do not have to pay tuition. It's part of your stipend. So you are not paying for it, and you are getting a bit of like a salary while you're doing it. So.
And that's what that means. Stipend means you're getting money to do the research while you are still being educated by people who are your mentors and people that are also currently doing the work, correct?
Exactly.
Excellent. What do you think some of the favorite things about this career field for you are?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about doing research is that when you think of an experiment, so you have a question, you think of an experiment to test that question, and then you do the experiment and you get the result. And for a certain amount of time, you're the only person who knows that information of everyone on the planet. You are the only person who has that insight into whatever, and no matter how small it is. And so that's such a wonderful, amazing feeling. And then you get to go share it with your coworkers and your friends and your mentors and everyone. And it's a really, I don't know, it's a wonderful feeling to be able to contribute to those little bits of knowledge that we have about the world. And I also love science is really, it's collaborative in that people get to, I can think of an experiment, but then I'll go talk to one of my coworkers about it and ask their opinion and see if they have any extra advice for me that maybe will make it work better or whatnot. So I'm always talking to people and talking to really smart, interesting people that have really good ideas. And, you can reach out to, if you know of a person, like we talk about it like science celebrities, right? So we all know various celebrities and popular people in the world, but in science, if you have somebody that you know of that they do really cool research, you can just write them an email and say, hi, I like what you do. I have a question. Would you be willing to talk about it? And usually they say yes. And so there's these really kind of like very smart, famous people that are always willing to talk about what they're doing. And it's just a cool community of people that are always interested in talking to you. So
yes, that's awesome. What about some of the more difficult parts of what you have done and what you're going to be doing in the future?
Yeah. So science can be pretty frustrating. And it's just part of the scientific method. You try something and most of the time it doesn't work. And then you have to figure out why it didn't work. And that process can be really repetitive and really discouraging at times. And it can be kind of mentally draining because sometimes it's really hard to figure out. You're just like, I have no idea what's going on. But again, that, I always come back to, I'll just could keep talking to people and keep being like, okay, do you have any insight, or can you help me with this? And is there something I haven't thought of? And so I would say that to me is the most frustrating part, is sometimes it's like, I don't know how to make this work. And then you feel stuck, but that's kind of like life anyway. So being able to creatively like problem solve your way out of those kinds of situations, I think is just generally a good thing to be able to do. So it's like life practice, I guess.
Excellent. Besides the money, because everyone needs to get paid to do something.
Have to support yourself.
Right. What are some of the other things that you get from your career and your job field that maybe you wouldn't get if you did something else?
Yeah, I really love, like I mentioned, just that, the ability to contribute to human knowledge about the world. Just the very basic, we have this question and we're going to do an experiment and then find out the answer. And now we know that. And that's how all of technology has progressed. That's how we live in the society in which we do, is because people asked questions, did the experiments, and then found the answer. So I feel like I'm contributing to the progression of humanity, which is a really cool feeling to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's fulfilling for sure.
Yes. Now, conversely, what is the salary range for the work that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, so it varies a lot. So with a PhD in science, so you now know how to do research. There's a couple different career tracks that people generally take, and one is to continue working as a scientist and eventually build up enough credentials and experience, and then apply for jobs to actually become a professor at a college or a university, and have your own lab then where you train other students and do other scientific research, and sort of you manage all of those people. There's also scientists that go into what we broadly call industry, which is, places like Google or Tesla or smaller companies that do they still do scientific research, but they're private companies. And then there's what I'm planning on doing, which is sort of moving away from doing actual research and then contributing to the world in some other way. So I want to go into scientific policy, which basically means that I want to help government agencies or private interests, either at the state or federal level, helping write and use science to inform the laws and policies that impact our everyday lives. And all of those have very different salary ranges. So my estimate is that once you get a little higher up, you're looking at probably at least high 5 figures, if not 6 figures, pretty comfortably. And it really just depends on where you end up. It's very variable.
So probably between 90 and 140 to start?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's students, that's $90,000 to $140,000 a year.
Yeah.
Excellent. And the last thing that I have for you today do you have any other things that you'd like to share with the students at Weld Central Middle School?
So one of the things that I didn't mention that I really love about doing research is the ability so I talked about collaboration and being able to just, call up somebody whose research you really like and asking them a question. And that has actually led me to be able to travel and go to different places. So I spent a couple of weeks at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's lab space that's up in Fort Collins. And I got to go there and work with a group of scientists there to learn some of the techniques that they were doing. one of the other really cool things about doing science and research is that we have conferences. And so scientists, well, this is before COVID, but one day we'll get back to this, I'm sure. But scientists will have conferences all around the world where we all gather together and talk about our research. And they usually take place over a span of a couple of days. And people give talks and they present scientific posters. But like last year, I got to go to Ireland to talk about my research, and I got to go to the United Kingdom, and I have friends that have been to like the Czech Republic and the Caribbean, and so there's opportunities to travel, not just for research, but also just to, go talk and hang out with other scientists and talk about your research. So that's another just like cool perk of the whole, scientific research world that exists.
Very nice.
So.
Yes, and I too am feeling the crunch of not being able to go to my conference this year as well, so I totally understand.
Yeah, I know.
Dr. O'Donoghue, it was very lovely to have you with us. I'm sure our students took a lot away from what we talked about today, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to be with us today.
Yes, of course. This was fun. Thank you for having me.